NYCC will continue to fight.
Fighter, fighter, you can hide.
NYCC will continue to fight.
Fighter, fighter,
You can hide. NYCC will continue to fight. So the Communist Party USA Queens Club and the Young Communist League are here in solidarity with New York Communities for Change. We're all here to try to catch President Biden's and Mayor Adams and Attorney General Garland and Kathy Hochul's attention. NYCC is out here talking about climate change and trying to get Biden's attention on behalf of issues relating to that. And we're here to remind Eric Adams about his former position to end solitary confinement on Rikers and to get Rikers closed altogether.
You have a sign about a hunger strike. Do you want to tell me about that?
Could you talk a little bit about it?
I know that more people have died in Rikers this year than any, in other words, increased numbers of people dying. People cannot get to their medical appointments. Someone was just denied seeing a dentist for a whole year. His teeth were rotting in his mouth. He ended up needing huge reconstruction surgery. He could have lost his life over that. So they are keeping people locked up who have only simply been accused, simply been arrested. They have not been convicted. Keeping people locked up who should be free and under terrible conditions.
Right.
So if you're keeping people locked up, you can't have conditions.
It's inhumane.
Yeah, this country, accuses other nations of lacking in human rights. But I think this country has some of the worst human rights abuses towards prisoners, and so we're calling for the full closure of the Rikers detention center.
So for people around the country, sometimes get confused about this. Rikers is a jail. Rikers is not a prison. And people right now, because of backlogs in the courts due to COVID, people are missing hearings. They're being transferred around. Rikers is so overcrowded right now that people are being kept in the showers. Like, they're not even being locked up in proper rooms. They're being just kept in damp, cold showers with no heat. So there's a hunger strike going on at Rikers right now. It hasn't garnered a lot of media attention, and the people on the inside and people on the outside are just screaming and trying to get the world's attention on this, because right now we're operating a death camp in New York, and it's called Rikers, and it needs to stop.
There's been some back and forth about whether Rikers should stay open. There was a plan to shut it down, and that's become sort of a long-term plan, and then it's been walked back at various points. So what exactly do you want to see happen with Rikers, and how do you respond to people who think that we do need to have, that we have a growing crime problem, and we do need to have a way to address that?
Well, the growing crime problem can't be addressed by locking people up. We've tried that. We have the largest prison population in the world, both in total and per capita, and that hasn't stopped crime from going down. So obviously, continuing to operate that prison camp is not going to solve the problem. The current population at Rikers, a lot of them could just be released. A lot of them will be released when they eventually get to their hearings. It's just that there's such a backlog that they can't get to them. But a lot of those prisoners can be either released because they're nonviolent, or they can be transferred into places that have more humane conditions. But Rikers is it's old, it's falling apart, and it's one of the most horrible places on earth. I have a friend who just got out of Rikers. He was held there for over a week, and he said that he was inside with men who have done hard time in federal prisons, and Rikers is the worst thing that they've ever seen. And if you know anything about the American prison system, that is a horrifying statement. Absolutely horrifying.
What kinds of measures would you like to see in place of the kind of imprisonment that you're objecting to? What kind of measures to reduce crime would you like to see?
Our party believes that to really solve crime, we need to start with fixing people's material conditions, making sure that people have a roof over their head, have food on their table, and are able to provide their basic needs, necessities, and so on. And that's how you really prevent crime, providing proper mental health services and,
providing food, providing housing, providing better employment opportunities. And it's not just us who believe that. New York's communities, all sorts of organizations and activists have been loud and clear on this issue. More police will not make our communities safer, will make our communities feel safer, and it's not going to solve any underlying crime problem. It's just going to get more people locked up, which is going to cause more economic hardship and more crime.
Is there anything you'd like to say about the priorities of the Communist Party? You're the New York Young Communist League and the Communist Party USA. A lot of people are not familiar with your organizations. We hear a lot about democratic socialists in New York, but not about you guys. So what are your big priorities, and what would you like to see happen?
Well, we believe that we need to move toward a just system, which will be a socialist, communist economic system. We need to get rid of capitalism. But in the U.S., that will happen, we call it Bill of Rights socialism. It'll happen through voting. It'll happen through people being out in the streets. And the kind of just society we're looking at is just what we've been talking about here, where everybody has housing, everybody has a job, and everybody has respect. And part of that also involves ending racism and sexism and all manners of homophobia. And so that's also an integral part of our program. So, we do believe that we need to form alliances in order to accomplish that. There are some Democrats we work with. We definitely work with lots of community organizations. We work with tenants groups. We work with New York Communities for Change. And we support them in their program. And so we don't think that our party will accomplish this all by ourselves. It's going to take the broad masses of American people to stand up and say what we really want. And I think the American public totally agrees with us. People will say capitalism is not working.
Do you think that most Americans would consider communism to be the right alternative, though?
Well, they have been fed
centuries of propaganda at this point. Well over a century of propaganda. So, we understand that, the simple word communism does scare people, and it does turn people off. But the thing is, we know that bringing the material prosperity that America is capable of to the people who actually produce it, and giving that wealth back to those people and putting it back in their hands is broadly supported, whether, whatever name it comes under, right? So people will agree with our policies, and they will see by our actions and by the people that we stand with what we're about, and they'll be able to judge for themselves.
I think that the main complaint that many Americans have about communist systems is that they impose a central control, and Americans are very supportive of the idea of freedom and don't want a central government controlling their lives. So what do you think about that concern?
So I think the biggest misconception is that, when people think of communism, they think of some kind of dictatorship. We believe it's the dictatorship of the masses, the mass of people. The central government is the people. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's totally democratic. And we already have experiences of that in the U.S. We have experiences of town meetings. That's what communists do. If you go to Cuba, that's what you'll see. They call them, instead of calling them town meetings, they call them committees for the defense of the revolution on every block. We have that too. And so that's why communism would work really well in the U.S. You know, perhaps better even than it did in the Soviet Union, because we have a long tradition of the Bill of Rights. We have a long tradition of people's involvement. Unfortunately, you see how discouraged everybody is that very few people vote. We're always encourage people to get out and vote. And you'll see in the future, we will be running communist candidates for local office. Meanwhile, we support progressive candidates. Anybody who can move us forward, we support. We're total agreement with the electoral process that goes on in the U.S. It just, more people need to be allowed to vote. People in prison should be allowed to vote. People on parole should be allowed to vote.
And you know, I think another way to reframe it too is, you know, communism, the name itself, community and communication. You know, so that's just another way to frame it. It's the community coming together and to make decisions about everyday life and society, having democratic workplaces, and yeah.
All right. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
Close Rikers. Close Rikers
Rikers.
now.
Rikers.
All right.
Join
Thanks for
the
talking with
Communist
me.
Party, CPUSA.org, and YCL, NYCYCL.org. There you go.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.